Welcome back to another episode of Taking Inventory. This week, we're joined by Daniel Tejada, co-founder of Straight Up Growth, an Amazon agency helping brands scale their businesses. They've done over $500 million of sales over the past few years. And Daniel is one of the world's foremost experts on Amazon. So he's about to take us to school. Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
What's up? What's up? Bezos per Bezos, everybody. Let's do it.
We love it.
Incredible intro. Maybe a top 5 intro to date. But yeah, well, thank you, man, for doing this. And I think we got like a ton of questions about Amazon, but maybe just to start, like, how did you even get into Amazon ads? I mean, now obviously it's like super obvious. It's a huge ads business, but I don't think it was, even
No,
years
it
ago.
was.
So,
It's a great question. I started doing Amazon ads almost 9 years ago at this point. So 2016, before it was cool. Basically, I was in digital marketing, doing like SEO work, all the traditional fun stuff that comes with an agency there. Was looking for a job, found one of the first agencies that did Amazon at all. They actually acted as a private label seller. And so I was basically managing ads in-house for them. And they were like, do you want to be the first person to do Amazon ads? And I thought, at the time, I literally thought Amazon was a bookstore. I'm like, why do they even have ads? I didn't know that was a thing. They're like, they just launched. So I went on my job interview. I'm like, look, worst case scenario, I take this job. I don't get paid very much, but like I learned a skill and I could leave, at any point, right? After like 3 weeks, my boss, because I kept asking him like, questions about Amazon and stuff, and he goes, you already know more than me. Figure it out, from there. So I just watched YouTube videos, and I remember I had an epiphany after like 4 or 5 weeks. I'm like, this is it. Like this, Amazon's going to blow up someday. This is just Google AdWords, but different because it's further down the sales pipeline or the funnel there. And yeah, $3 billion in sales later, I am here.
And when you were doing it, I mean, we were all watching and everyone knew Amazon had an ads business, but they never reported numbers. And so everyone thought it was like this cute little thing that they were doing while AWS was growing and the core business was growing. Like, did you see this thing just becoming a massive business
Dude,
while you're doing it?
Year one,
Yeah.
Amazon did $550 million in ad revenue, right? So it was like for the entirety of the fucking year, right? Now they'll do $30 billion a quarter, right? In ad business. But like what I saw was the writing on the wall in terms of how big their search was becoming, right? So a lot of brands, like our first year, we would call, huge companies and be like, look, unauthorized sellers are taking your product, selling it on Amazon. And then they wouldn't care. They wouldn't pick up the phone. Our second, or maybe a year and a half in, I had Energizer knocking on the door to our thing, and they're like, Amazon now sells more batteries than we do, right? Just because Amazon search had become so big and so powerful. And so I'd say it was like a very it started off really slow, but after like my first year and a half, Amazon just slingshotted and you started to see a huge exponential kind of rush in. It's still in that process, right? Amazon is still, in my opinion, like a baby in terms of its ad business from where it's going to be down the line as well. So it's cool to see. I've seen like almost 100%, growth on their ad business every year for a long time.
And like in terms of the ads business itself, and we had Adam Epstein on a few weeks ago, and he kind of talked through it. But I still think most listeners don't really know like what are all these ad products, like what can you do, how does it play with Prime and like the Amazon DSP, all this stuff. Can you just kind of like give us a lay of the land of how Amazon ads work? Because it's like, especially for a lot of our friends who came from the social networks, it's different. It's better in a lot of ways, but it is like totally different. And so, yeah, can you just give the lay of the land?
Well, for sure. And I think it's a little bit more confusing than people think, right? So when people think about Amazon ads, they think about the search ads that you see, right? When you're shopping on Amazon.com or on the app, and you search for protein bar, and you see the sponsor, those banner ads at the top, the little sponsored products that you'll see, sponsored display that sort of follow you around. So that's Amazon's core kind of starting business. Now, the bigger side of Amazon in terms of advertising is actually their DSP platform, right? Or their demand side platform. And so it's very, very robust. It leverages Amazon owned and operated sites. It also connects with all the traditional ad exchanges as well. And so that's where I'm basically leveraging Amazon's first party data, their first party or their Amazon audiences, and essentially I'm following those customers wherever I want around the internet, right? So there's so many capabilities there. Like for example, I can run streaming TV video ads, right? Directly to a TV show. Amazon has 90% video completion rates, right? Like way higher than everybody else does on something like that. They also have their sports network, so I can like today if I wanted on my DSP look for a certain audience and actually run a Thursday night football advertisement, right, directly through Amazon's platform. They recently, it's in beta right now, but they just opened up the ability to drive advertisements directly through podcast networks. Actually, there, so that's a new capability people don't think about. The other thing is like one of Amazon's biggest advertisers is BMW, right? And like people aren't buying Beamers, like through search results, right? But they recognize the power of Amazon's first party data. The CPMS are pretty juicy on there, and like honestly, like one of the areas I think is the biggest potential for growth for Amazon is going to be non-endemic, right? I've like seen some of the goals or performance targets that brands have, and like they're uh really low compared to like what you could achieve through Amazon there. The barrier to entry is that you have to have a seat on Amazon's DSP in order to access it, right? So I have a seat because I've been doing it for a long time. That's probably one of the reasons why Amazon's DSP isn't as large as it will be one day once they do open it up to more advertisers. But Amazon's advertising it's an ecosystem at this point. It's not just search ads, right? It's really, really expanded.
Given that so many of the advertisers on the display and search side are smaller merchants, why haven't they opened up the DSP to kind of the long tail and mid market?
So it's very complicated to use. Like they want, like even as an agency to get access, right, to a seat, you have to go through an onboarding process, right? I was able to kind of like skip a little bit because I was literally one of the first people to ever use Amazon's DSP platform, right? So I've done it quite a few times where we knew how to use it, but it is a little complicated to use initially. Now every quarter Amazon makes upgrades, right? And I'd say it gets easier and easier to use. But one of it is simply the fact that like they don't have the internal resources focused on like setting things up. I also think they have to like create a seat for you. I don't really know what the technical reason is for that, but like somebody on Amazon has to like work, like an engineer has to do the creation process, so it's not just like giving a new user access as easily there. They do, like I know Amazon has made a big push like directly to agencies, right? So they'll go like there's a couple authorized DSP agencies that can give people seats, for example. uh, but it is a little bit complicated, right? It would be interesting, like most of their other ad products, for search, for example, they take right to the merchants, right? They let the merchants kind of figure it out sometimes, and then they start selling it more. But like a lot of stuff, they'll actually have the search people go through. But DSP, I think, because it also involves other platforms and other exchanges, that maybe that's why they wall it off a little bit more than they should or could there.
And as for Amazon search ads, I mean, for your clients, like, how much of your world is just like Amazon O&O inventory
Oh,
versus
so 70%, right, of
okay.
what I'm doing is going to be still Amazon focused, right? And part of it is like, especially for search, you have the highest conversion rates of any platform that exists, right? I have a brand in the keto space that against the term keto, we have almost a 50% ad conversion rate up, right? Like that is unheard of from a conversion standpoint. So from a new customer acquisition thing, like I will spend all day on search, right? DSP, there's a couple different kind of avenues for it, but like it's the Amazon audiences that allow you to be unique, right? And so we can start layering on like all sorts of different things, right? We can squeeze more dollars per customer. We can go further up the funnel. We can cross promote, right? There's a whole bunch of avenues where search is like the most bottom part of the sales funnel, right? If somebody is searching for a coffee, it's because they want a coffee right now on Amazon, right? So
and,
And
and then do you think
for my ADD brain, it helps.
have you and have you toyed around with like with Walmart. I know, we were on this panel together, a few weeks ago, and like we were talking about TikTok, and then maybe even like Shopify, but like just given how dialed Amazon seems, like what are the other guys doing? Like, do they have a shot of catching up? Like,
So honestly, I tell brands all the time, right? It's you can get some slight incrementality on it, but it will never be anywhere close to Amazon's marketplace, right? And the reason why is Amazon dominates search. 65% of all product searches start on Amazon, right? Google is around 20% last time I checked, and you see TikTok with like 11% of product search, right? It's going to skew younger. So if you were younger, it would probably be a much higher percentage for TikTok for product discovery. But that's the big thing, right? Amazon turned itself into a search engine and a non-branded search engine. That's the big difference. Like if you're looking at like Target and things like that, their search just isn't the same. Amazon spent at a loss billions of dollars just building their FBA network, right? In that Prime thing. They also had something called the Marketplace Building Program, which was anytime you would search for any big brand, they would own all the Google search results, even on top of the brand itself, right? They would run those paid ads, and they did everything they could to condition buyers to go to Amazon to like for their everything discovery piece, right? Um, it's very expensive for a brand to do that now, right? And Amazon had the cash cow of AWS to cash flow that, right? If I'm Target, I really got to go in the red for a long time to build out a search network like that, right? Walmart, their CEO has been like, they're pretty transparent about the fact that while they're growing their marketplace, they're growing that ad business. Their goal for their online store is to get you to buy in store, right? So it's not ever going to be conducive towards the same level of growth that you'd see through Amazon's marketplace because the goals are different, right? And the other case being like it's too expensive to kind of get there. Um, Not that you should discount, like there is room for incrementality, but like I know brands that are like, oh, we're on 33 different platforms, and it's like, okay, well, how much of that, how much does Amazon do? It's like, oh, well, 95%, and it's like, okay, is it really worth going on the other, 30 platforms there or what?
I mean, on the Amazon side, they've accrued all of these consumer habits, but even just a few years ago, I think anecdotally, we talked to a lot of e-commerce founders, and like they were they were scared of Amazon, right? Of kind of diluting their product, diluting the direct to
Yes.
consumer relationship. But it almost seems like the last few years, all of these same brands that said that are now embracing Amazon, and that's a huge sales channel. Like, what do you think the shift was in the behaviors of like the founders and operators?
So a few different things, right? I think that the first being them realizing the non-branded search side was so big, right? So like this was like the Energizer example. When I chatted with them, they literally said, "How is it that Amazon Basics sells more batteries than we do? Right? We are the number one battery in America. We've been for this long." And I'm like, "Look, there are 400,000 searches a month for battery. They're taking 30% of all sales against that term, right? You're losing out because you're not even on this on this page, right? So even though you are a household brand, you spend all this money on advertising, people can't find you on that search engine itself, and so you're losing out that way. So I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing that was really helpful is seeing brands that chose like a lot of brands I would pitch 5-6 years ago, and they're like, oh, we'll never be on Amazon, it's not on brand, right? Like, okay, cool, well, here's your competitor. Here's how much volume we're doing on Amazon right now, right? And eventually enough of those brands lost out because they didn't join Amazon, and now they're late to the party, where brands now think of Amazon as a first thing. I even have brands that are companies like startups that are like, hey, do we even launch a .com? Should we just go directly to Amazon to start? And these are not the same type of like private label brands I saw like in my early days of Amazon. These are legit, well-funded, VC backed startups here that traditionally would have launched on .com, and they're like, look, we're going to build our .com into uh, an education piece that will point directly to Amazon, right? Like that's how ingrained Amazon is at this point in time.
and you mentioned like the Amazon like basic stuff, like is it worthwhile? Is having those product lines almost just a really really great way to get people advertising more in a weird like the fact that they can have like default fulfillment of these categories, is that like always a good incentive to get someone advertising against it?
I think part of it is just to like I don't think Amazon really cares much about making money off of their Amazon Basics because they're actually really bad at advertising their own products, right? I've never lost in a category that Amazon Basics jumps in, right? And it's the same argument where it's like, do people lose to Kirkland, right? In store, if you are, you probably have a marketing or a product, issue right there. And so, I think Amazon almost did Basics in a way to be like, look, if you're not going to sell this, we're going to take sales from you until you kind of step up and join the party here. If you notice, like you don't see a lot of Amazon Basics the same way you did 5-6 years ago when they were definitely trying to court brands to get aggressive on the platform.
Yeah, it's interesting because that'd be like, I remember when we were like, at Snap, it'd be like percentage of revenue that came from like a third party versus like first party, and like, initially you obviously want to get as many sales as possible, but then like you wanted to create the ecosystem, you just were getting paid to not do the work, and it's interesting that like Basics can become it's like a pretty good way to motivate someone to get into a category, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure. I could tell you we had tried talking to that battery company a lot of times before they finally got on the phone with us. So it worked.
And then what is the just in terms of like we hear all this stuff about Amazon going so aggressive on CTV and Prime, like where do you think this all takes us? Like, is it the right way to think about them? Like they are truly like a Netflix Disney competitor? Like who are they to you? Like from that
So
perspective?
to me, they are going to be an advertising platform, right? And that's really what it is. The marketplace is secondary. The video content is secondary. Their music platform is secondary. It's really, in my opinion, it's a giant ad platform, right? And it's about having as many layers as possible where you could do like traditional advertising, right? Like when I was in what's it called? When I was in college, we learned about the law of sevens, right? Like old school advertising, like let's hit customers on TV, radio, newspaper, billboards, right? Amazon's just doing the same thing, right? They're trying to get it where I could follow a customer from their television show, right? To NewYorkTimes.com, to their actual Amazon, kind of search results, to the podcast that they're listening to, right? And they're going to have first party attribute, or they're going to have like attribution data that's much better than everybody else's because of the fact that over 100 million people in the US have Prime, right? And I think that's really I feel like you actually mentioned this in our conference, but like the walled gardens, right? It's like all of these companies are creating these like walled gardens for advertising essentially. And what Amazon's trying to do is just have the biggest fucking garden, right? Where they literally have every single option. And it doesn't really matter if you go all in on video or you go all in on search or you go all in on podcasts. They're going to take a piece of every single little one of those things, right? The cool thing being like if they have everyone's first party data, like that's helpful, right? They can actually track attribution a lot better than other companies can because of that as well.
And like what categories like aren't good on Amazon? Like I always hear good things about this the ad platform and the growth, but like where is it where you're like, all right, this thing just like isn't the answer?
So apparel gets weirder, right? Because you've got like sizing, right? And it's like the images you can't really see. So you have to get clever. Like I can't really like if I'm selling a white t-shirt, it's harder to go after t-shirts, right? Versus almost any other category, right? If I'm selling a protein bar, I can go after protein bar. I just have to adjust my listing towards it. White t-shirt is hard because you have all this variance, sizes, cuts, everything like that. I find with clothing, you can make it work, but you have to do more like to stretch a little harder. So like conquesting, for example, brands that right, and so researching like that kind of angle, you can still hit, but it's not as sexy, I'd say. Um, what else is weird for Amazon? Books are interesting. Their ad platform is a little bit different there, and you usually have to go through publishers, so it's like a little weird in terms of growth for their bookstore. Um, I love consumables, so trying to think of, but there's also some weird items that do really well. Like I worked with a brand that sold after like basically racks for your Jeep and stuff, and he was doing $11 million a month at one point. We got him to, and I'm like, I never thought that this was a category that could do that. So there's a lot of good categories honestly on Amazon. There's certain banned ones like you can't do sex toys, can't do CBD, like certain banned products or whatever. So those are annoying. People cheat, and there's ways you can sell without it, but it's not ideal for sure.
And talking about the variance of like whether it's apparel or other things, look, I think that's something unique that I certainly didn't know about Amazon until starting to do some research here. But like, it is such a place where there's organic search, organic discovery, and organic decisioning, and so much competition for that attention. And so, like I imagine like the paid aspect is a small component of the other optimization to get people to look at the right images, to list it properly, to stand out. Like, can you talk a little bit about that process? Because I would classify that as more like organic, quote unquote,
Yep.
and then the paid is getting somebody in to then look at your listing.
Yeah, my goal is to do most of my revenue organically, right? Like, and so even with our paid efforts, there's kind of two things with Amazon. One is with those paid dollars, it does drive new to brand sales, right? Especially if it's non-branded search terms. It can also directly impact your SEO. So Amazon's unique in the sense of SEO is not just like keyword driven; it's actually more performance driven. So essentially, like they're looking at like cumulative orders against a specific search query, and so your order performance against that term matters more than like just having the right keywords in your back end, right? So like I've ranked items with like as a test, I ranked an item without any copy one time, right? Just put like stuff in my images there. And so Amazon doesn't really care from that platform. Now, what you do care about is conversion, right? Conversion is a key factor. And so your listings and how they look are very important from a conversion rate standpoint. Couple things to think about. 81% of searches on Amazon happen on mobile, right? So what does that mean? Uh, you should not be optimizing on your computer. You should be looking on your phone to see. So, like product images, every single one of our image stacks will include text overlays, right? A customer should be able to buy just off the images alone, right? There. Uh, Things like premium A plus content. It's this area in the bottom of the page there where you have the ability to upload video and images versus just text alone. Implementing something like premium A plus content versus not can increase your conversion rate by up to 15%, which is like a ridiculous amount there. So you really like Amazon comes down to a couple KPIs for me. Sessions, which is like the unique visitors, right? So you can tell, do I have a traffic issue based on like many sessions I have, or conversion rate, right? And if my conversion rate, Amazon will actually show you your subcategory average, so you know where your benchmarks are. So if I'm below that, I need to, I have a conversion issue, right? So I just need to make some changes to the actual listings themselves to get there.
It's crazy to hear you talk about it because you've been doing this for so long, but like the asymmetry in that marketplace is so great. Whereas you look at Google or Facebook and like it's kind of reverted to the mean. Everyone's pretty good. Everyone kind of understands the best practices and like the difference is minimal. But this sounds like there are vastly different, different
Dude, there's
performances.
there's people playing different sports right now. I'll tell you that much, right? At this point, than what we're playing. It won't be like that in 10 years because it's not that hard. But at the end of the day, but it's just like Amazon's still so new compared to like Google and SEO and all that jazz. At the end of the day, it's accelerated so quickly.
And is there like, you think about Google and Meta and like Shopify and I guess TikTok, but I'm not sure how long we'll have to think about it. But like, what is Google going to do about this? Like, how do they fight this?
I think they tried, and then I think they've kind of pivoted around it, right? So they like Google Shopping was their first intro, right? So like that was a huge thing back like when they announced it. Like I think that was like 5 or 6 years ago, but it never took off, right? It never really became that big of a thing. There, I know there's some incrementality there. For search, they I think slept on the fact that they were having Amazon fund are giving them all these ad dollars, so they didn't think about the fact that Google or that Amazon was paying that money now, so they could take away those search dollars later, right? I think one thing that is helpful with Google is people search differently, right? Amazon people are searching bottom funnel, they want it right now, right? Google is more discovery, and so I think they thought that because the type of searches they do are different than what Amazon does, they'd be safe. I mean, we've seen Google's market share of search driving down for years. Like, even compared to TikTok, right? There's an impact there. So I do think Google just kind of slept a little on that front. The interesting thing I'm curious about is what Google does to combat their advertising business, right? Particularly the DSP, like that network there. Um, at some point, I think it could be like folks could take some of those display dollars from Google and move them into Amazon over time, unless Google really starts to come up with some unique standpoints. I know Google's going hard on like AI and search results, which is interesting. So I'm wondering if there's going to be a paid angle down the line there where maybe they'll try to like maybe you can pay to get yourself in some of the AI generated search results, and that's kind of how they'll kind of pivot and kind of differentiate themselves. But I do think Google, should be nervous if I was them on advertising in the long run.
And then like for TikTok, are they, like just you hearing you talk about Amazon versus Google, just like it is really clear that if you want to drive sales, Amazon, like if you were like gun to your head, pick one place to go get some sales, you'd be like Amazon, right? Like
Absolutely.
it,
I wouldn't even need the gun, dog. I'd yell it without
yeah, yeah.
it.
So that, that is like, especially just like as the economy, gets like more challenging, that's like, it's very important to be able to deliver that. Is TikTok the only other example right now of like where discovery and like sales are happening?
I would say TikTok is really the biggest one. Like Amazon's biggest driver of sales on Prime Day or Fall Prime Day was TikTok. They drove like I forget how many billions of dollars, but they literally were the biggest driver, right? So that's why TikTok also has TikTok Shop. I hear really good things about brands using TikTok Shop, right? Now, one of the issues or kind of differences is like TikTok, it's built differently, so it's not very like efficient for purchases. It's not efficient to like ship things and stuff like that. So I do think brands are going to need an Amazon just because TikTok isn't necessarily stepping up to the plate on that sense. I really don't see like Sheen is one that probably has some product discovery, but it's it's more specific to clothing, right? So it's got a very like it's cultish in the types of item it does. I do think it could hit beauty at some point, like maybe skincare could get like some sort of search engine. But for the most part, like other than TikTok and maybe Sheen, I don't really see like product discovery happening on other platforms other than Amazon.
Is there anyone that's selling a ton on Instagram that you are like dealing with, or is it like
They're using Instagram is a tool you use to drive more sales on Amazon is kind of the way brands use it, right? Like Amazon has their ad attribution link. I saw actually this thing on LinkedIn. It was about like Hexclad, which is absolutely crushing it, right? They did more. They paid for their entire Instagram influencer budget using the Amazon attribution link that Amazon paid them, right? So they literally crushed, right? But like that's how Meta's making. That's how Meta makes money in this situation is driving sales to Amazon, basically.
Going back to I think Shein and TikTok, the two Chinese companies, something in the news that we've seen a lot about is like Amazon and knockoffs and kind of unverified sellers or people. I think you talked a little bit earlier about you know un, unverified
Unauthorized.
resellers. Yeah, like
Yeah.
how big of a problem is that actually? And like, are you concerned about it for your clients?
Um, so unauthorized resellers has been an issue since I've started on Amazon, right? And it came from the fact that that's how Amazon got their marketplace to grow was the retail arbitrage guys. So essentially, Amazon allows anybody to sell any product on Amazon, except for certain SKUs are brand gated. But like if I went to Costco and I bought, 100 Dasani water bottles, right, and I decided, Dan's water bottle store, I could sell them under the same listing for Dasani as the regular brand, right? Now, usually you don't have the margins to do so, right? If you have distribution agreements in place, if inventory isn't, leaving the back of your warehouse, like you're fine. You should never have an inventory issue on Amazon. It's brands that sell to every single person in the entire world without any distribution contracts, right? And it's like everybody has product, and so some fools are like, "Let me liquidate," right? Or I'm just going to sell it at wholesale. And so you can have issues on Amazon. Counterfeit is not really, I'd say, as big of the issue. It's more of like brands not taking control of their own listings, right? Like if I want to submit a power or counterfeit claim on Amazon, I could do a test order if somebody like showed up that shouldn't have my product, right? Literally as soon as I receive the package, if I can get any sort of like image or something that's off, I send that picture to Amazon, and within a day, they're done. They're shut down, right? So it's not that hard to get rid of counterfeiters. It's the arbitrage situation that's a little harder because Amazon doesn't. There is no rule that says you can't sell this item, right? It's the brand has to put that contract in with the person they're selling the item to in order to make that happen. I do have some brands, like especially brands that are like distributed heavily globally. They globally tends to have a lot of discounts, and so those sellers, like, they might discount their beauty product 50% just to get it into Europe, and then that person then turns around and sells it right back in the US, right? So there's some sneaky stuff that you see happening.
One thing that you keep, at least I keep thinking about when you're talking about with Amazon, is that like obviously the first party data is awesome, and the DSP is incredibly powerful to reaching a bunch of this non-owned inventory. But the inventory that they do own in the form of like Prime, that's like expensive stuff to buy, right? I mean, meaning just like you got to pay the NFL for all these rights, everything, and so there isn't like this UGC inventory pool that they can just you know there's for better or worse, like kind of one of the great things about Snap was that like just like you don't have to pay anyone really to create content for you outside of like
Yeah.
Spotlight. And so I don't know, like, and I don't have a ton of friends at Amazon, but do you see them like just in conversations with them, just kind of knowing the DNA? Do you think at one point they finally like enter into social for real and like try to build a social network, buy
They,
one?
they've already tried. That's the thing. Like, it's so I think acquisition would be a great one, right? Like, if they could buy TikTok, that would be a perfect like social channel for them, given how many sales come from that. They have, like, there's this thing called Amazon Posts, right, which people don't know about even, but it is a social platform that they have. And so, like, for brands, for example, they encourage you to use their posts, and you have followers on your page. Somehow, you can do like little. They're literally like little Instagram photos, right? So you post a pic with a little tagline thing. They do get free impressions in search results, so I have my brands do them because we get followers, and we actually like we'll get impressions on our competitors' product listings. So I'm like, absolutely, I'll use this make believe social channel, I guess. It just doesn't do anything. It's there, but I get thousands of impressions like on them, so they will show up in Amazon search results. It's not really something that's ever taken off, right? It's like Amazon's phone. Remember the what was that, the Fire phone or something?
Yeah. While they may not have like a other than posts, like these separate kind of inventory pools or kind of UGC areas, I am seeing more and more, and maybe it's just a function of what I'm following, but like
Well,
more
the Creator
the
Network,
creator network.
right?
Yeah. Where they're doing
Yes.
live streams, but also like, I mean, they've been like notoriously great at creating this influencer and creator network, and people just post on Instagram and everything links back to a store page that's branded on Amazon. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's awesome. So there's a couple different things. You've got the Amazon influencer option, which is where, like, you'll see this in like a lot of like influencer pages, but they'll have like an Amazon storefront. If you click on it, they're getting a percentage or an affiliate link essentially on anything on that store. Then you have the Amazon Creator Network, which is where I can um, list a product for it's in beta, so not all of my brands can participate, but I can list a product in the Creator Network. I could say how much I'm willing to spend for you to try the item, and like do a little post on it essentially there, and you can choose by subcategories and stuff like that. It's not amazing, but it does. I have seen it actually create like a decent lift on certain brands there. They also have, like, they're starting to do like paid events for these influencers. So like they'll like there was a thing like it was like during the fall or something, but they like flew a bunch of influencers to Mexico with products and shit like that, right? And so that they could get them all to like post and shop on Amazon and the whole nine yards. So they're definitely working on building that network out. And a lot of influencers will link out to Amazon because they pay out pretty well on the affiliates, right? I don't even have to have the brand endorse me to put you on my storefront page, right? So if I'm a high traffic influencer, I would just list every high volume item on Amazon. I would put on my store page, and because people buy it, right? It doesn't have to have a theme. Amazon is hungry for traffic.
Yeah, we'll ask you for your store feed at the end of this. of all your
I
of all
need
your
one.
batteries and toilet paper and everything.
And for
Oh,
some of
man.
your like kind of like DDC style brands, how if at all are they thinking about Shopify? Like you kind of have where does that play?
So in the past, it was almost exclusively like they were hesitant to go to Amazon. They're like, like, I don't even want to do this. I don't want to give you my email list. I don't want to like do anything. This has to be 100% separate sales. Then more recently, it's been like brands are like, I know brands are going to come. Like, I know some customers will go here, some customers will go there. So it's more omni-channel. Like, I know people have been talking about omni-channel for a while, but I feel like it's the most real in the last like 12 months for me, where brands like fully know that they need to hit both. I'm also even starting to reach a point where it's almost tipping over where new brands, what your own.com is secondary or not even an option compared to Amazon, which is interesting. I've heard some brands being like, let's go Amazon retail, right? Versus Amazon.com and then retail next, so that's interesting. So there are still some brands I talk to that are really large on .com and haven't quite figured out Amazon, where they're still a little bit more hesitant, but the conversation has definitely been shifting more towards Amazon first, I'd say.
And do you see a bunch of examples of like where like if we've heard this, some friends are telling us like on like products blow up on TikTok and then they like drive a ton of sales, obviously like an Erewhon. Like is that happening like every day with some of these Amazon brands?
100%. One of my original claim to fame was I launched the protein cookie for Quest Nutrition like years ago, and Lenny and Larry's was crushing it in retail. Retail wouldn't even take like Quest protein cookie; they weren't interested there. And now I made it the number one cookie on Amazon. They went into retail and then they crushed, right? Because at that point you came in hot. I did another brand. We made the number one energy drink on Amazon. They took that to their Costco rep and got into 3,000 stores, like just off of showing them the screenshot of like my brand analytics. So it's shifted for sure.
So, I mean, we spent the last 40 or so minutes, I've been talking about just everything that Amazon has going on, and kind of what you've seen in the last 8 years or so. Let's look at the next 8 years. Like, what, as you look at kind of Amazon continue to develop, you've said a few times that Amazon's such just like in an early phase of this ads business. Like, what does the future hold for the Amazon ads business?
Yeah, I think we're going to see more saturation on search. So search is going to get more expensive, right? There's certain categories like if you sell a supplement, it's actually like it could be a little bit pricey, right? But there's still categories where I see like $1 cost per click bids, and you're getting 20 to 30% conversion rates. Like, still not fully done somehow, which is cool. Uh, Non-endemic, I think that's the big thing. Like, I think brands that don't sell on Amazon are going to wake up to the power and the potential of Amazon's DSP platform. It's super underutilized in my opinion. There, and Amazon's developing this great ecosystem, and there's not as many brands on it, right? Or not as, your competitors aren't usually on there, so it's like that still has a lot of room to run, in my opinion. Um, New ad solutions. I'm curious to see. Like, I think at some point they're going to start being able to measure the impact of like, or really the attribution of sales, not just on Amazon but off Amazon, right? So like, there's a big impact on like if you crush Amazon, you see retail sales lift almost always, right? I think they'll get better and better about tracking how that lift kind of happens. There, I don't know if it's going to be like geolocation data or data shares with other companies, but I do think that'll be a thing, and even more integration with the social platforms, right? Like, I know Amazon and Meta have a beta program right now where you can actually like it's an advertising like attribution program together, which is interesting because they've always kind of fought each other. It'll be interesting if Amazon ends up partnering with brands like companies like TikTok or other kind of platforms there and just get easier and easier attribution. Um,
And then last question before we let you go is what about like Alexa and AI? Like I know they have that new AI assistant in the app, but like do you think they're gonna like end up crushing that?
so I was at Amazon's AI Day recently, there, so that was interesting to see. They have some really cool. They're going to build a platform basically. So I don't think they're going to try to like. They're not going to build individual AI tools, or they will to an extent. But I think what they're really going to do is build the technology and allow brands to build their own AI on top of their platform, right? So like I know when I went there, we did like this little workshop where we like built our own AI tool and then got to use the like prompt tool from there. So it was cool, like using their AWS built, whatever, I forget what it's called, but they are going hard. It was interesting. I like that they're trying to build the racetrack, not the horse.
Daniel, this has been amazing, man. Thank you for walking us through all of that. Before we let you go, do you want to just tell listeners kind of your company, where they can find it, and where they can follow you to learn more?
Your Amazon
Yeah,
Post
absolutely.
account.
Yeah, my Amazon Post. Oh man. So my company is Straight Up Growth. You can find us at straightupgrowth.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn or find me on LinkedIn, Daniel Tejada. I like him a lot. There we go. But yeah, feel free to reach out. All things Amazon. We're always chatting. We have a super smart team here. We are education focused. We'll do $750 million this year in sales on the Amazon platform, and I'll spend $75 million for my boy, Mr. Bezos, this year. So, Bezos for Bezos again.
I like it, man. Thank you for doing this. We appreciate it. And we'll probably bother you again in a few months for what's happening next with Amazon.
I love it. Anytime.
Thanks, man.